How's it going, everybody? Sam from West Meadow Rabbits here. I just made a video on winter rabbit care, and I'm going to make this video right now on breeding rabbits in the winter. It's related, but there are a little bit of nuances when it comes to breeding rabbits right through the winter. So let's get into it. So breeding rabbits throughout the winter is definitely possible. It's easy to do. You know, no issues there. A lot of people don't do it just because they don't want to deal with it, but as you can see, I've got litters everywhere. Healthy. They're doing fine. The buck is ready to go. So is that guy. There's two main things you got to consider during the winter, which I address mostly in the winter care video. One of them, which is making sure everybody's got their food, water, and fresh air needs met. Obviously, an unhealthy rabbit is not going to be one that's good to breed, so you make sure you take care of the basics, which you can check out in my other video. And then the other thing you have to worry about in the winter is sort of their willingness to breed. Now, domesticated rabbits have had a lot of their older wild rabbit instincts bred out of them. So that means that in the wild, rabbits only breed during certain times of the year for obvious reasons. You know, you don't want to be raising kids in the middle of winter in the wild. But that's been mostly bred out of domesticated rabbits, especially the bucks. I find that the bucks who are in good shape are pretty much willing to go year-round. The bigger problem is with the does, because some of that instinct still does remain, and generally speaking, they're a little bit more reluctant to breed in the winter, especially if it's extremely cold, and, you know, they're just not having a good time. So some of my does in here. So how do you deal with does not wanting to breed in the winter? Well, there's a couple things you can do. First off, you need to make sure that they, like I said, have all their basics taken care of. But at the same time, make sure that they have access to sunlight. So you see, they're kept out of the cold here, but I make sure that there's plenty of room for light to get in, because sort of like chickens, they're stimulated by light. And if they're not getting a lot of light, that's actually what makes them not want to breed. It's more the light than it is the temperature. You know, a lot of people keep rabbits inside. If you're keeping them inside or in a shed, if it's really dark in there, you need to supplement light. A little incandescent bulb will do it. If you make sure that they have light, I've got plenty of skylights here. You want to make sure they get as much light as possible. The days are shorter in the winter, so I need to make sure that they're getting 100% of the daylight into here, you know, as soon as the sun comes up to when it goes down. I could have better results if I bothered hanging incandescent bulbs, but I just don't feel like it. And usually I select for does that are cool with breeding in the lower light levels. That being said, I still want to make sure they get as much natural light as possible. So that's the big one. That's going to really influence how well your does breed in the winter. They still might be reluctant, so it's more of a persistence thing. You know, if you're having trouble, make sure you're putting them in there every day. The act of the male sort of chasing her around will actually usually stimulate the breeding instinct in does, so that can help. And the other thing you can do, obviously, if you're having problems with rabbits breeding any time of year, a lot of people recommend you put apple cider vinegar in the water, which does a double duty in the winter of helping it reducing the temperature which it freezes at, so your water will last a little longer. It shouldn't be a lot. You know, for a big crock like this, you could do a teaspoon. The smaller ones over here, you could do, you know, you could do a teaspoon in the smaller ones and 2 teaspoons in the big one, but find what works for you. So that can also help. The big thing, though, if you do get your rabbits to breed in the winter, which you'll find out who likes to breed in the winter, who doesn't, you can select for that. Once they do breed, though, you need to make sure that the nest box is out of the elements. If I just had a cage right here and a lean-to, and I put the nest box in there, the babies wouldn't make it. It would be too exposed. So you have 2 options. I have the rabbits in here and in the shed, which are obviously protected, and I showed in my winter care video the one nest box I have in right now. Again, these guys don't need it. They're hopping around. Excuse me, hero. Blocking the shot. There's the nest box right there. And they've sort of compacted it down because they're older now. But the key thing is to really fill this guy up with as much shavings as you can. I usually fill it up to right about here with shavings. And then I put some hay in and let her put her own hay in and put the fur in. And that'll allow the babies to bury down into that if they want to. If you find that your doe isn't pulling enough hair for the nest, you want to make sure you save some. I always have a little bit of hair on hand in a Ziploc baggie that I can add to nests that I think are a little light on it. You have some does that go absolutely ballistic, like this girl over here, pull out half their hair, and then some that'll just pull out a little bit. But you want to make sure that they're building good nests. But if they build good nests and they're in a protected area, those babies will be okay. The other option is if you have a hutch set up like this, I usually leave these blocked off even in the winter for adult rabbits, because 3 sides of this are enclosed. They have a nice roof, keeps them having fresh air, and sometimes they crap in the hutch. But when I'm breeding, I'll unblock that area. You can see some little guys hanging out. And I'll put the nest box inside this area. As you can see, there's a ton of shavings in here. They've eaten all the hay now that they're grown up. What are you doing? What are you doing? And then that will create this nice, warm, cozy area that the nest box is in. So it's sort of like a nest within a nest. And they do fine with that. I've bred all through the winter. I never had a problem with that. So just like I said, though, for the other rabbits in the winter care video, the key thing is keeping them out of the snow, making sure they have access to fresh water, making sure they have plenty of food, especially your breeders. And importantly, specifically for breeders, make sure they have access to plenty of sunlight. And if you need to, you can supplement with incandescent light. In the off chance that you get baby rabbits that fall out of the nest box, unless they're frozen solid, I highly recommend you bring them inside and warm them up and then find out if they're dead. Because, you know, the saying goes, there's no such thing as a cold dead rabbit. There's only warm dead rabbits. And you'd be surprised how many times you think the kid is dead, and after you warm it up, it starts moving again. So if you do have that happen, you can warm the little sucker up, and if he's moving again, you just pop him right back in the nest box. Make sure he's buried nice and good. And, you know, it's also good, general practice, it's good to have some kind of lip on your nest box to make sure, here, I'll show you this one, actually, it's a little better. Just to make sure that the rabbits can't get pulled out, because sometimes they'll hold on to the mother when they're nursing, but even more so in the winter. So you see that lip right there, obviously it's not a problem for these guys, but when they're babies, if they get pulled out, you know, they're not going to be able to get back in, especially if they fall out here. You know, that's pretty steep area. There's no chance they're getting back in. So a nice solid lip sort of knocks the babies off who might be holding on. And that'll do a lot for making sure that your rabbits don't fall onto the wire. And you can do that, same thing when you put a nest box into these wire cages. It's the exact same principle. I use the same nest boxes. So just make sure that you have a nice solid lip. But otherwise, yeah, it's the same deal as caring for rabbits in the winter, just those couple extra considerations. It's completely fine to breed through the winter. It's perfectly possible. I've never had any issues with it. Like I said, there's some slightly higher mortality rate on the babies because, you know, when they fall out, you know, they don't have 8 hours. They have like a few minutes before they freeze. But that's usually not an issue. And if your rabbit is making a good nest and she's a careful mother and you're using the right nest box, you're not going to have a problem with that. But otherwise, yeah, that should about do it. If you're having trouble getting your rabbits to breed, like I said, apple cider vinegar, light, and patience. You know, it might not happen, but it is possible. So that should do it for today. It's 2 videos in one day. I'm pretty chilly, so I'm gonna head inside. If you guys like this video, find it useful, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, spread the word on awesome rabbits, right? Don't you think people should raise more rabbits? He knows people should raise more rabbits. All right, guys, stay warm, stay safe, and until next time.